I mean, that's a wild ride. That's a really wild ride. I'm glad it was not in front of the jury. What's up, everybody? Take Care of My Trial continues. A lot of witnesses happening, but most people had questions about Sally Smith, wanted to watch her testimony. And while it was interesting, by far the most interesting part was the proffer, in my opinion, and how heated it got between Mr. Anderson, the plaintiff's attorney, and Sally Smith. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip the questions that Mr. Hunter, the attorney for Johns Hopkins, asked her, which is basically just, you did an investigation. He explained that this proffer was being made for potentially appellate reasons if there were issues, and it would have to go up on appeal. That's why you make a proffer. It's an offer of proof. This is what we would have testified to, Judge, if you allowed it. And here are the reasons we would have testified to it. Let's put it in the record. The jury's not going to hear it. And I heard a lot of people saying Johns Hopkins already knows they're going to lose. That's why they're setting it up for an appeal. I will say throughout the trial, both sides should be doing everything they could to protect the record for an appellate issue, especially in civil cases. And criminal, it's different. Prosecutor's not going to appeal. So the defense attorney is always protecting the record for appeal. Every good attorney should do that, whether or not you think you're going to win or lose. I actually thought we were going to end up appealing the last trial I had, and we got a great verdict. So the other side appealed. So both sides always have to protect the record because you never know which side's going to appeal or what's going to become an issue. You have to fight everything, make sure it's done appropriately, and judges usually respect and appreciate that. So let's get to this very heated cross-examination part of the proffer of Sally Smith.
I believe that's all I have, Your Honor.
Mr. Anderson, do you have anything in the proffer?
Dr. Smith, before, or let's say, right at the start of this in the first part of October, you had a call with Dr. Kirkpatrick, did you not?
I did.
And Dr. Kirkpatrick explained to you that he had been treating Maya Kowalski for CRPS, correct?
He did.
And he told you that statistically speaking, CRPS is often mistaken for conversion or Munchausen by proxy, did he not?
I don't really remember exactly what his words were. I took a few notes from the conversation that I had with him, and I know that there was some general discussion along those lines.
And yet you did not put anything in your report about Dr. Kirkpatrick, did you?
Yes, I believe there's a whole section about his medical records.
Yeah, except for the fact that you did not tell anyone in that report that he had warned you off of going after the Kowalskis.
It's completely irrelevant for a child protection team medical evaluation.
Is it? You can disagree with doctors, but you're a doctor and he's a doctor, and you think one thing and he thinks one thing. So you should probably just put in there what the other doctor thinks. Then you can put in there, I didn't find him credible for X, Y, and Z. You can put that in there, and that's totally fair. But to just completely leave it out, is that appropriate?
Because that's the whole point of the evaluation and gathering all the records. The problem in these cases is that the treating physicians have not done that. And so the fact that he, who sent her to Mexico for the ketamine coma, told me not to investigate child abuse, it was completely irrelevant to me because it
almost sounds like she thought he was abusing the child by sending her to Mexico for the ketamine coma. And just in case you're wondering whether or not she thinks she has any wrongdoing, she's already settled for $2.5 million for her actions in this case. But it seems like she still stands by a lot of what she did.
My job was to investigate child abuse. So if I had come away from my job saying, I was supposed to do this, but this doctor told me not to, so I'm not doing it, and there's no evidence of anything here.
That's not what he's asking you to do. He's not asking you to change your mind because of what he said. He's saying, at least put it in the report so when the court looks through it, they can see all of the information from both sides.
I would not have been doing my job even remotely near a standard of care.
Do you not understand the importance of putting both sides of the story in your report?
The both sides of the story is the responsibility of the various people who are going to present it to the court. My job as the medical director for the child protection team is to do what I need to do to assist the investigators and the detectives and the attorneys that are involved in the case as to whether there is evidence to support a diagnosis of whatever type of child abuse is being assessed.
So that's kind of the best argument she makes the whole time is, it's not my job to make arguments for both sides. Each side has an attorney. They can gather that information and they can make those arguments to the court, and they did. Now, he starts calling her a prosecutor, not an investigator, which, you know, is a little hyperbolic, but at the same time, these answers kind of make her seem like she was prosecuting, trying to prove that there was child abuse, as opposed to just investigating and reporting whatever the facts are that she's found, because she left certain things out, and all of those certain things that she left out are on the opposing side to what she ended up recommending.
So it's not my responsibility to lay out some whole long argument about what it might be otherwise if I had extensive evidence to support that it's a type of child abuse.
Dr. Smith, you know there wasn't a single child psychologist or child psychiatrist that diagnosed what you were claiming. You're aware of that, right?
That's also irrelevant.
So you are the ultimate decider of medical issues which you have minimal or no training in.
I have extensive training.
Yes, but
In-
not.
That's a Proffer. You can answer, Dr. Smith.
I have extensive training in evaluating child abuse and neglect. Medical child abuse is a child abuse pediatric diagnosis. There is a parallel track in psychiatry where there's a thing called factitious disorder imposed on another, which is assessing.
He's like, you never even, or you don't even have the training for this yet. You say it happens. And none of the people that do have training agree with you.
The perpetrator or the caretaker.
Just to be clear, because I didn't say it off the jump, this is not in front of the jury. This is outside the presence of the jury for appellate purposes.
In that scenario. But I don't need a psychiatric degree to assess medical child abuse. I'm very well trained to evaluate medical child abuse based on my child abuse pediatrics experience and board certification.
Well, there's not a single child psychologist or psychiatrist that agreed with you. You do realize that, don't you?
No, I don't.
Well, name a child psychologist or psychiatrist that examined Maya Kowalski who agrees with you.
Well, that wasn't their job.
And it's important that he put that qualifier in that examined Maya Kowalski. She says that wasn't their job. I'm pretty sure if they examined her and they thought there was child abuse, it actually is their job to report it and to try to stop it.
To write in the report whether there's medical child abuse. So that specific thing documented by, for example, Dr. Cabot or Dr.
Excuse me? You're saying these psychiatrists and psychologists can evaluate Maya and see that there is child abuse, but it's not their job, so they just decided not to mention it? Not a good take.
Dr. Katzenstein. I don't know. Honestly, I'd have to look back to see if they ever documented that as one of their diagnoses, but that's not their job. My job is to assess that. And if I present adequate evidence to the court can act on that. So, the court has every ability to pull all these people in, including Dr. Kirkpatrick, including Dr. Hanna. I think they testified in the dependency action. And if the judge decides that there's serious question about whether I'm right, then, the court makes that decision based on the evidence that they receive. That's not my job to litigate the whole thing and put out all of the potential possibilities in the case and say, I'm the child abuse pediatrician, but I don't really know if there was child abuse here, because in this case, there clearly, in my opinion, was child abuse here.
Yeah.
Clearly, in her
You
opinion.
did not put in any of the conclusions or any of the data from Eagle's Wings and those therapists and psychologists that saw the Kowalskis, did you?
There was a licensed clinical social work intern who saw Maya and her family at Eagle's Wings. And I don't honestly know where that was in the pile of records when I was writing up my report. I kept writing part of the report, having to do other things, writing part of the report, having to do other things. And I inadvertently did not include that in my report.
Inadvertently did not include that. That's at least some admission of negligence on her part, that she left out what a very important group of people said. But she was doing other things while she was writing the report, so she inadvertently left it out.
Well, you did research it enough to realize that Rebecca Johnson had a master's degree and over 20 years of experience as a therapist at Eagle's Wings. Did you not?
Well, the question really in terms of my part
I'm
is
just
whether
asking if you knew that or not, ma'am.
I knew I'd have to look and see exactly what her credentials were. I'd certainly, defer to you if you're reading her credentials off, but it's irrelevant unless she did the whole thing I did, looking at all these medical records and has expertise in medical child abuse, for her to be able to say one way or the other if there was child abuse or not.
It's so great for a doctor to say it's irrelevant what another doctor said unless they did every single thing I did. That sets up a situation where you realize that you are the only person that can be trusted. Nobody else can be trusted because they didn't do everything I did. And yet at the same time, she's saying a lot of these records I read, I totally disregarded. Well, if you're disregarding records that you're reading, why do the doctors need to read those records that are disregarded? Maybe they just disregarded all the records they didn't read like you. This is a problematic witness in case you can't tell. And regardless of which side you think is right or is going to win, doctors and witnesses should not be like this. They should not disregard what everybody else says and think they're the only ones that possibly understands anything and possibly did a job or got the right answer in this case, and nobody else did. That's frustrating. That's not incredibly credible, in my opinion. The other witness for the defense, there were issues. There were some things that happened, but I thought he was a pretty good witness overall. The one I said, the star witness for the defense. She certainly is not.
Okay, look, did anybody agree with your assessment that there was no CRPS?
Yes, I believe they did.
Who?
I believe that there were multiple people on the hospitalist team that didn't think she had it. And I believe that although there was probably some question about whether she might have some sort of amplified pain disorder, the pain management team didn't think she had CRPS.
Well, amazingly enough, we did have Dr. Elliott in here to testify, and he never said that she did not have it. None of the doctors so far testified, A, that they were experts in CRPS, or B, that she did not have it. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not. I wasn't supposed to watch any of the testimony. So I have no idea what people talk
Gather
about.
that. From your investigation, though, at the time, did it come to your attention? Nowhere in any of the records did anyone who had any expertise in this, that is a pain management doctor, a neurologist, or a
And again, he's putting qualifiers in there that have expertise in this, that saw Maya, that are pain management doctors, that are neurologists. None of them agreed with you. All these specialists that focus in and their expertise is CRPS. None of them agreed with you, but you, who's not an expert on any of this stuff, thinks that you're the only one that has the answer.
anesthesiologist ever agree with your assessment that there was no CRPS?
I think I just answered that. Yes, I believe there were people that had the same opinion.
Okay. What did you check with Dr. Spiegel, a board certified neurologist that treated Maya and confirmed CRPS?
Assumes facts, not evidence. Go ahead and answer.
Dr. Spiegel had this 10-year-old child do hyperbaric oxygen treatment, I believe, on 40 occasions in a row when she also got ketamine on some of the same days. So I wasn't terribly worried about whether he thought or did not think that she had CRPS.
But you'd already decided in your mind that a board certified pediatrician with his years of experience.
So we're going to start to keep track. She disregarded Dr. Kirkpatrick. She disregarded Eagle Wings or Eagle Winds or something. She disregarded them because she didn't agree with them, didn't find them credible. Now we're talking about a board certified neurologist. She didn't agree with him. She's not a neurologist, by the way. She didn't agree with his treatment or what he said, so she didn't find him credible. That's 3 so far. Guess what? We're going to name a lot more doctors and medical professionals that Sally Smith thinks she knows better than, totally disregards, finds them unreliable, almost goes as far as to say that they abused this child or helped the parents abuse this child. It is wild to think that people actually think like this. That would be like me coming on here and saying every single lawyer is, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it seems to me that would be like me disregarding every single other lawyer, thinking no other lawyer knows better. Because I'm watching them here, I know more than them because I've watched these other cases and read these other cases, and I don't find anything any of them say is credible. That's just not true. You can disagree with doctors. You can find a doctor not to be credible. But if you're creating a report in an investigation of everything that you found, you should put everything in there and then come to your conclusion. And you can, like I said, you can put in there why you don't think certain doctors are credible or why you disagree with their diagnosis, but to completely leave it out, it's not appropriate in my opinion. That's not an appropriate, I know, as a prosecutor who's presenting the argument of one side, then I understand that. You hit hard on everything that's good for you. It's the other side's job to hit hard on everything that's good for them. But not researchers and investigators and doctors. That's tough for me. That's a tough one to swallow.
Was not qualified to render an opinion on that. Is that right?
And now this is another pediatrician, board certified pediatrician that she's disagreeing with.
Go ahead and answer.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Barr,
Yeah.
a board certified neurologist, he testified and confirmed CRPS. Did you put that in your report?
I don't know that I specifically said that he said that diagnosis. I think, as I recall, without going into the stack, that I did say in the history that Dr. Kirkpatrick had diagnosed her with that. Those people might have had that opinion. I don't think, based on my review of the CRPS literature and discussions with physicians since then, and in the context of all the evidence that there was of medical child abuse, that Dr. Barr's opinion, if that was his, that she had CRPS, was reliable.
Okay, so now Dr. Spiegel is not reliable, and he's a neurologist. At least we would agree that neurology and anesthesiology are the 2 areas that are most involved in the investigation of complex regional pain syndrome.
I imagine those are people that typically evaluate and treat patients with complex regional pain syndrome, sure. But not all neurologists and pain management or not all neurologists or anesthesiologists are, if you will, created equally. There are some.
And I agree with her that that's true. But find me all the ones that agree with you then, because there are all these ones that agree with the plaintiff side of the case. Where are all the ones that agree with you?
Who practice at a very high level, and when I, having reviewed medical records from all kinds of providers all over the state and even other parts of the country for 35 years, read through information and see all the supporting information that they have and compare that with other information that I gather in my medical record review, I can assess whether the person that made thousands of dollars was reliable or not. And I did.
The person that made thousands of dollars is reliable or not. So are they just doing it for money? Are they just milking the insurance? Are they reliable if they do that? Who else made thousands? Actually, not thousands, not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of dollars billing CRPS. How reliable are they? I just think I don't think that makes them unreliable necessarily. But I just think it's funny that to say that about one side, knowing that both sides have both made money off of this, experts have made money off this, insurance has paid doctors on both sides. So to say that one side's less reliable because of the money that they made, that's where my issue comes. Not for me to say that one side should get paid and one side should not for their medical services. It's just for her to say that she's the end all be all because she spent 35 years reading other people's medical records, not going to the schooling for anesthesiology or neurology, not actually treating those patients herself, not doing CRPS investigations or treatment herself, but she is the ultimate expert and can just totally disregard what those board certified doctors are doing. That's for the court to decide. But again, she has a valid argument that I think she should have just stuck to, that both sides have lawyers. Both sides can present those arguments to make sure it's a fair process. It's not my job to necessarily present all arguments. That I think is her best answer.
Didn't find those people to be particularly reliable in terms of their diagnosis, even though I certainly included their information in my report.
Dr. Hanna, an anesthesiologist with over 25 years of experience in treating CRPS, you didn't put his confirmation, or excuse me, he did a diagnosis of CRPS in your report either, did you?
I believe in the history I made reference to that. I'm pretty sure I did say that he, made that diagnosis. But this is a doctor who was giving a 10-year-old child who's on the small side, 1,000 milligrams of ketamine, anywhere between 8 and 32 milligrams of Versed, doses of Zofran, 1,750 milligrams typically of magnesium, all at the same time.
And again, I'm not even saying it's totally wild or out there or inappropriate or that she could never say she thought there was child abuse. I think she could have said that there was child abuse and presented all the arguments and evidence that she believes she felt there was child abuse. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But leaving out conversations of people saying it could look like this, just a heads up, leaving out diagnoses from people that are board certified, or burying them in the report, or only putting part of their records in, or inadvertently leaving part of their entire records out in whole. That's the problem I have. Not that she ended up determining there was child abuse. If that was her diagnosis and that was her, conclusion, then fine. I think that's fine that she could make that conclusion, whether you disagree with it or agree with it. That's not the problem here. Her outlook is really the problem. Imagine if this person is in charge of making any decision that has to do with your life. And all these other doctors you went to that were experts that you trusted, that you worked with, she totally disregarded everything they said. How would you feel about that? And she has a very important role in this process.
In an outpatient setting with no documentation of vital signs, and there was indication in the records that appeared to me to suggest that the family member was the person monitoring the pulse oximeter. So that person, to me, is not particularly reliable in terms of whether this child needed the treatment that she was getting, whether he made an accurate diagnosis or not. So I put his information in my report. Yes, I discounted his diagnosis.
And of course, you discounted Dr. Cantu's confirmation
Everybody
of CRPS.
Well, I never got any records from Dr. Cantu, so I couldn't really address that whole situation other than from the WordPress blog. This person put a 9-year-old child in a ketamine coma for days. It took her probably about a week to just be able to be discharged from the hospital after that.
So
I didn't find him reliable from what I saw.
All right. So if I'm understanding you, the fact that 3 different treating anesthesiologists specializing in CRPS, 2 different neurologists specializing in the treating of CRPS, you know more. Fair?
I don't know more. As I said, I looked at their information, and based on what was done with this particular child, I did not find their opinion to be reliable.
And who elected you to be the judge of whether all of these board certified physicians were reliable?
Nobody. I presented it to a real judge who made a determination.
Well, isn't it true, ma'am, that you are not a medical investigator? You are, in fact, a medical prosecutor.
That's absolute nonsense.
Because an investigator.
I got to be honest. I don't think that is nonsense. At least in this case. We'll just say in this case. It seems like she was trying to prove child abuse, not just presenting all of the information and showing her conclusion.
Include both sides of the story and let the judge decide, right?
No, the child protection team.
And you guys tell me if I'm way off base. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you think she was just fair and down the middle and just presenting the facts on both sides and then letting the court know what her conclusion was.
Director will assess whether there's medical evidence to support a diagnosis of child abuse, and then the dependency attorney will present that to the judge. And the other side gets attorneys also. There were 5 in this case. And they present all the information, and then the judge tries to decide, whose information is more reliable.
Here, under oath, are you telling us, are you an investigator or are you a prosecutor
I am
of the
neither.
information?
I'm a medical doctor who is an expert in child abuse pediatrics.
Mr. Anderson, I'm giving you very wide latitude. Okay, you're finished? Okay. Mr. Hunter, anything further in Proffer?
Very briefly, Russ.
So that was basically it. I mean, that's a wild ride. That's a really wild ride. I'm glad it was not in front of the jury. But we'll kind of see. Let me know what you think about that. Just like, what are your thoughts? What are your impressions? Do you have any questions? It was really just a reaction more than anything, because legally speaking, there wasn't a ton there. But a lot of you asked about it. So that's what drives the content here. Hit that like button if you haven't already. I am now late for my golf tournament, so I'm out of here. Love you all. See you soon. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who might be interested here on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, at Lawyer You Know. But on Instagram, we are still at Tragos Law. So look us up on there. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. Of course, all of these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.